Since finishing the book Deep Work by Cal Newport, it's really made me rethink the boundaries that I have surrounding my energy and attention. These are two things that everything seems to be fighting for these days. It's really your most valuable assets and what will make or break whether you can achieve your goals. I've decided to lay out some of my healthy boundaries that I've put down since reading the book Deep Work. And what's interesting about the book is it really encourages you to actually put a lot of distance between yourself and others. Not to say that it makes you more of like a solo contributor, but just making yourself less available to others makes you more available to yourself. I've tried to enforce more boundaries when working with others and just with myself, even ways that I can simplify my decisions so that I'm not wasting energy on things that don't really matter. Let's talk about energy first, because I think that this is the easiest one to cover. And one thing that I've been doing to protect my energy levels is reducing decision fatigue. And one way that I do this is to almost treat myself like I'm a child. So if I was the parent and I had a child, what would I expect their needs to be? If I look back on my own childhood, like what are some needs of mine that maybe did or didn't get met? And how can I meet those for myself? And so what this allows me to do is it makes things very structured without having to think about it. So if I'm treating myself like a child, that means I've already got my lunch made. I've already picked out my outfit for the day. I've already lined things up for myself so that it is scheduled and regimented. And that structure is something that I get to decide, so I don't have as much resistance, but it's also very liberating because it frees up my mind to think about other things that are actually going to add value to my life instead of, oh, right, I'm really hungry now, and what am I going to have for lunch? I don't have to worry about that stuff. So treating yourself like a child is one of my favorite tips that I've started implementing for myself. And this comes down to being disciplined with everything. And it helps me a lot with discipline. It's shifted how I approach different chores and other things that do need my attention and energy into a self-love practice in a sense. It's a self-care thing because I'm doing all the things that I know will make me feel good in the future. And I just get them done. If I was taking care of my best friend, if they needed me, how would I take care of them? Reducing decision fatigue is huge for conserving your energy and making sure that you're allocating your energy in ways that make sense, okay? Doing more with less is huge. Another technique that I use, this is more so for attention, but of course, attention and energy are very tightly bound. If you're doing a ton of context switches, you'll see the impact on your energy levels. But one thing that I do to protect my energy when I'm working is pomodoros. So I know that some people, it's kind of a love or hate thing with Pomodoro timers. Some people find it very intrusive to their workflows. Others think it's like the holy grail. I will actually adapt how I use Pomodoro timers depending on how I'm feeling. If I am starting to feel a little bit sluggish and burnt out, I'm really having to motivate myself to do things, really struggling to get things done, then usually I'll use the Pomodoro timers as a way to add structure to my day and a way to kind of quantify my effort so that when I look back on my day, I say, you know what? Even though you're not feeling your best, you got 8 Pomodoros done of even if they're just 25 minutes, okay? And during that time, you know that you gave your all. You gave your full attention to that task, because that is kind of the point of Pomodoro timers, right? You gave your full attention, you were uninterrupted. This is your protected time that you dedicated to that, and I'm proud of you for doing that. So I try and use it in that case. So when I'm not feeling great, use it with the shorter sessions. But when I am feeling really good, and I'm just doing my regular work day, usually I'll set a Pomodoro timer for an hour. And so my work session will be an hour, and my no interruptions means that I'm not checking instant messaging or emails or any of that stuff. Those things just kind of trickle in throughout the day. I am not DevOps. I am not a doctor. There's no life or death scenario that can come up in this situation where I really need to be attentive and alert to every single message that I'm getting. So typically I'll use this hour-long work session timer as a way to protect my work time and my attention. And then on the breaks, I'll check all my messages and catch up on my messages, and then go back to working. That allows me to actually get into a flow state. If you're a software developer or any kind of knowledge worker, you'll know what I mean. It's really hard to get enough time surrounding a flow state to actually get stuff done. It is something that you really do want to protect as a knowledge worker. And that's one of the ways that I do it. One thing that's a deal breaker for me with jobs has always been flexibility surrounding my schedule. I'm very fortunate that I've been able to work at a lot of startups, in which case it's not a set like 9 to 5 generally, unless you're doing IT support and other people are kind of like depending on you being online at that time. Generally, I will work quite asynchronously. I won't work the traditional 9 to 5, but I'll usually work in the mornings all the way until probably like early to mid-afternoon. And then I'll work again for a couple hours in the evening. This, to me, given my circadian rhythm, if you don't know what that is, I highly recommend looking into it and trying to figure out what yours is. Those are my peak hours for my brain. If I was still in school and working, I would prioritize those hours, or at least like whenever I feel like I have the most energy and it's easiest for me to focus with the least amount of resistance. Those are your most precious hours, and you should not be wasting those on email correspondence. You should be spending that time solving complex problems. You should be spending that time doing things that are going to set the tone for the day. And if there's things that you want to prioritize and you're finding that you're not getting time for it during the week, you're going to get way more out of an hour during this key period than you will in 4 hours in your off time. You know what I mean? So I try and prioritize when I'm working and what I'm working on to align with my natural energy levels during the day. Speaking of Pomodoro timers, another thing that I've always found Pomodoro helpful for is deciding on what you're focusing on. So each Pomodoro session will have a specific goal or focus. I found this especially helpful when I was studying and working, because my Pomodoro session, I would do one session for one subject, and then, either I felt like I was kind of on a roll and want to keep working on it, in which case, awesome, you're in the flow state. Let's ignore the breaks and just keep going. Otherwise, I'm like, okay, it's this work session is done. It's time for me to shift to another subject. It can be great for minimizing your context switches and just allowing you some grace on your day-to-day basis and what you're expecting from yourself. Especially when you're learning. Learning should be fun. You should be indulging your curiosities. It should not be like forced labor every single time that you are studying. If so, you got to change something about it, okay? You're going to be most productive and attentive to what you're learning if you're feeling excited by it and curious. That is all of my tips for kind of protecting your time and energy and attention, inspired by the book Deep Work. If you haven't read the book Deep Work, this is not sponsored, by the way. Shout out to Cal Newport for writing such an incredible book. If you haven't read any of Cal Newport's books, he is, I believe, a computer science major. He's worked as a software developer. And so I personally have found that his examples on how he uses his philosophies or applies these philosophies, he gives a lot of examples of different software developers in the field. And that I find makes it very easy to resonate with when it's such a relatable issue that they're solving. So if you are a software developer or not a software developer and you're interested in enhancing your productivity, I would definitely check out Cal Newport's books. I personally just listened to the audiobooks and they were well narrated. I have no complaints. I really enjoyed the book Deep Work. I hope that this serves as some inspiration for you to set healthier boundaries with your time and attention and energy. There's only so much that we have of that, and it really is something that is worth protecting. I will see you guys in the next video. If you want to see more from me, I'll link a video up here, and you can click on that and just keep on watching, hang out with me online. Okay? Bye.